Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Untold Tales from this side of nowhere. I'm your host, Connor Jones, and I'm joined today by a special guest whom I'll be happy to introduce in just a moment. First off, a message from our sponsors. This week, we're sponsored by the Copper Corner Cafe. The Copper Corner is open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Stop by and try any of their delicious menu items, featuring homemade bread for all sandwiches, and of course, their famous pie for dessert. Breakfast is served all day, so come on in to the Copper Corner Cafe. We're also sponsored by the Wyoming Welcome Program. The folks at the Wyoming Welcome Program are excited to announce a new service called Table Talk. They place brochures on restaurant tables in Cody and Powell that are filled with fun facts about Wyoming, jokes, and the month's holidays. In addition to this information, they include advertisements from local businesses. So if you're interested in being included in a brochure and getting your business out there, please send them an email. Their service is affordable and effective. You can contact them at Haley J, that's HALEYJ, at wyomingwelcome.com. And now the podcast. So I said I was joined by an important special guest today, and I'd like to introduce everyone to my mom, Leslie Jones.
Hello.
Thanks for coming today, Mom.
Yeah, I'm pleased to be here.
Is this your first time on a podcast?
It is my very first time on a podcast.
All right. Well, I'm glad that I could be the first one to get you onto a podcast. Mom is a huge fan. I guess I can say that. Um, Moms are usually fans of what their kids do most of the time. So,
Mom is a fan with a few that didn't really happen.
yeah. It's not unusual for me to get a message from Mom after an episode with correction on some order of events or locations. So,
Did not really say that.
yeah. Well, but as I tell people, the events in the podcast they're purely fiction. So,
Yeah, mostly.
yeah, mostly. So, but man, I was thinking about people that I had on the show, and I was like, I can't believe I haven't had Mom on an episode. So, this is today we're gonna tell a story that she played a big role in, and as you can, she's plays a large role in most of my stories growing up. And yeah, Mom raised 7 kids out there on poverty flats. So,
And Dad.
yep, and Dad, partners in crime. So,
Part
but
surviving.
yeah, partners in surviving. But it was exciting. It was a lot of fun and produced a lot of great stories. So,
Memories.
lots of memories. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and I guess we'll jump in. And I've asked Mom to read the women's parts today, the girl parts. It'll be hearing my voice, and she'll fill in there. So, you ready, Mom?
I'm ready.
All right. So, the title of this week's story is Locked Out. Here we go. I once had a friend who came to visit and noticed Al Jr. playing with my wife's iPhone. The friend quickly cautioned Lily against allowing him to do so, saying that he would probably lock her out of the device.
Don't worry.
Lily said breezily.
I'm not too worried about it.
The friend, who had never observed a 2-year-old opening an iPhone with his mouth, continued to be concerned. Her worries were only heightened when Al placed a 911 call and began babbling in an unintelligible language to the operator. The friend didn't have to be too concerned, though, because after the operator had said,
911, what's your emergency?
And listened to Al go on for a few moments. She grumbled
Third one this week.
and hung up. It's a good thing Lily wasn't worried about the whole thing, especially since she would have been worrying during the entire hour she had to wait before her phone would allow her to use it again.
Well, I guess I won't be using this for an hour.
Lily chuckled, placing her phone on the counter where Al couldn't continue playing with it.
I told you.
Lily's friend said. You know, I said, you're lucky it's just an hour. Getting back into something after getting locked out by a toddler could be a lot worse. I ruffled Al's hair, and he gave us all an innocent smile. Did have you ever had a grandchild lock you out of a phone? I know that you didn't have an iPhone when we were kids, so.
No. No. I haven't been locked out.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
I've been locked out a number of times, so. Uh, Getting locked out isn't at all new to me. Having grown up with 6 siblings, I was always getting locked out of things. The trio of trouble locked me and my twin brother Fred out of their bedroom so we wouldn't snoop in their diaries. Mom and Dad locked all of us children out of their bedroom so we wouldn't snoop around to see what we were getting for our birthdays. And Fred and I, in turn, locked our 2 younger siblings, Caldwell and Danny, out of our bedroom so they wouldn't mess around with our stuff. All this getting locked out was annoying, but at least it was expected. What we never expected, but probably should have, was getting locked out of a pickup truck 100 miles away from civilization in the Bighorn Mountains. It all started when we were engaged in the construction of the dream house. This endeavor required us to spend several summer days at a time up at the Jones family cabin in the heart of the Bighorn Mountains, where we all gathered stones that held embedded fossils to be used for decorating the porch and chimney. More importantly, Mom and Dad sought out lumber to build the house. For my parents, it was a lot of work. For us kids, it was a child's paradise. I mentioned the dream house a lot in stories, and I was just wondering, when did you and Dad decide that you wanted to build a house? Because we lived in Idaho for the first several years of my life, first 5 or so.
Well, when we moved back, we had always planned on living here for the rest of our life. And
Hmm.
so we had been drawing out plans for quite a while, and then Dad said, "Oh, I want to saw it out too."
So that wasn't initially part of the plan.
Well, not my plan, but
And then you got brought along for the ride,
yeah.
so.
But the summers were spectacular. I think we have some of our best memories from being on the mountain.
Oh yeah. No, I totally agree. And my memory might be more rosy than reality, but yeah, looking back, that was one of the best summers. Maybe was it 2 summers we spent sawing out the house?
The first summer we did Aunt um, Jan's, and then the second summer was ours.
Okay, okay. So yeah, 2 summers. So 2 of the best summers of my life, for
Yep,
sure.
yep.
Each day would start the same. We'd rise with the sun and eat a breakfast of hot cereal or oatmeal cooked on the little wood stove. While we were eating, we would study the rough-hewn boards that made up the walls and ceiling of the ancient cabin. All sorts of odds and ends hung from the walls. A pair of moose antlers Grandpa Jones had come across while herding sheep, a tin wash tub and accompanying washboard, pots, pans, and an oddly bent piece of wire. Mom, oh, that's Beatrice.
Mom, what's that wire for?
Beatrice asked one morning. Mom shrugged and replied,
I don't know, Beatrice. Ask Dad sometime. Maybe he knows.
while Mom and Dad labored with the 2 little ones close by. We older kids roamed the square mile or so of mountain land our great grandparents had homesteaded decades earlier, doing everything a kid could dream of. John Locke would have been proud to see us frolicking in nature, I'm sure. The air was fresh and plentiful up there in the Bighorns, and the sun shone brilliantly down on the whole posse of us as we played. Verdant pine trees accentuated the Rocky Mountain landscape, and sagebrush and tall green grass filled in the gaps. Candace was naturally in charge. Being the oldest grants you that sort of privilege. She would lead us on berry picking expeditions, seeking out the sour, seed rich raspberries that grew so plentifully on the mountain, or teach us to build teepees by using a strip of black plastic to tie together slats from the lumber mill. My twin brother Fred and I took on the role of bow wielding Shoshone braves with gusto, and the girls became Indian princesses. I'll never forget the sound of the wind whispering through the lodgepole pines and the scent of the rich black earth that made up the mountain soil. Those days were nothing short of idyllic, and I can't remember ever being worried about bears, or crazed mountain murderers, or poison ivy, or getting lost in the depths of a canyon, or anything like that. Okay, maybe I did worry about it from time to time, just once or twice a day, something like that. What's important is that we experienced the mountains in a way that kids nowadays rarely get to. There wasn't a smartphone with episodes of some kids show downloaded for us to watch. The girls didn't Snapchat or post pictures to Instagram. It was just us and the beauty of God's creation. Life as a kid was so simple up there on the mountain until it wasn't. I'm sure it wasn't our first trip up to the cabin. It must have been the second or the third, but I guess that's not that important. As per usual, Mom and Dad had filled the trailer with a couple hundred board feet of 2x4s and other assorted lumber. We had packed up the coolers and our clothes, and we were nearly ready to go.
Candace, put Annie in the truck while we get the last few things straightened up in the cabin.
Mom instructed my eldest sister.
Okay.
Candace replied. With a grunt, she heaved Annie, who was now 2 or 3, up into the truck and closed the door. Annie played happily with the assorted buttons and knobs, while we helped Mom and Dad haul the final few items from the cabin. With arms loaded down with coolers and food, we trudged out to the truck, Dad in the lead. We can put the coolers in the back of the truck, and the rest can ride in the expedition, Dad was saying as he reached for the truck door. He gave it a tug and stopped. Uh-oh, he breathed, letting the cooler he had on his shoulder fall to the ground. What is it, Dad? I asked loudly. Hush! Not so loud. We don't want to worry your mother, Dad murmured, motioning for me to be quiet.
Worry me about what?
Mom's voice cut through the mountain air like a knife. Dad's eyes widened. Well, Dad mumbled.
Please tell me what happened.
Mom said with a peremptory narrowing of her eyes.
What should I be worried about?
Dad looked supremely uncomfortable. Behind him, Annie beamed like a daisy and began biting the steering wheel. You see, it looks like Annie may have, uh,
Is she locked in the truck?
Mom blurted out, her indignation melting into concern in an instant. Yes, Dad sighed and then wilted.
Oh no! Dear, she's gonna overheat. What are we gonna do? We can't call a locksmith to come clear up here.
It's okay, Dad said with a brave attempt at cheerful indifference. She must have pushed down the lock knob while we were getting things out of the cabin. We just need to get her to open the door. When you pull on the handle, the door unlocks. Candace began rapping on the glass of the passenger window.
Annie, hey, sweet Annie. Hey, sweetie.
Annie looked up from where she was turning the radio on and off and gave Candace an enormous smile with limited teeth.
Yes, Annie, you need to open the door. Open the door. Come here. Pull on the door handle.
Annie, thinking this was a marvelous game, began clapping her hands. She took a couple unsteady steps across the bench seat, tripped on a belt buckle, and fell headlong across the seat. Mom gasped.
She's gonna get hurt. Do something.
Dad massaged his chin and peered through the driver's side window, lost in thought. We could break the window, Fred smiled.
No!
No! Mom and Dad barked in unison. It was just an idea, Fred muttered, and let the rock he was holding fall to the ground. I've broken into cars before, Dad grunted. What? I asked. Oh, it's not like that, Dad grinned. This isn't the first time I've been locked out of my own vehicle. Now, what we need is a good piece of wire, like a metal clothes hanger or something. We all began looking around, as if expecting a clothes hanger or a similar piece of wire to suddenly appear.
We didn't bring any clothes hangers, Dad.
Alice shrugged. Yeah, and the baling wire in my toolbox is too flimsy, Dad added. Annie had struggled back to her feet and was now making faces through the glass at Mom, who was doing her best not to show too much worry.
Well, we've got to find something.
Mom said, turning away from the window where Annie had pressed her nose to the glass. Mom! I yelled. She's licking the window! Annie laughed and left another enormous streak with her little tongue on the driver's side window.
So this is what it looks like if you're the ice cream cone.
Candace mused.
Yeah, the world's largest ice cream cone.
Alice agreed.
Girls, you keep Annie occupied and we'll go find a hanger. There's got to be something in the cabin.
Mom said. Beginning with the two bedrooms, we began combing the interior of the little three-room cabin for a clothes hanger. Grandpa Jones's room came up empty, and the north bedroom. There wasn't a clothes hanger in the wood cubby, and nothing in the main room either. There were a couple pieces of wire nailed into the ceiling for the purpose of holding lanterns, but none of them were long enough.
Come on!
Mom shouted in frustration.
We've got to find something.
I heaved a sigh and sank onto the old couch. There just aren't any clothes hangers, Mom, Fred groaned. Maybe if we act out opening the door, she'll know what we're trying to say, Dad asked hopefully.
She's two, dear.
Mom gently reminded him. As I leaned back on the couch, my eyes drifted around the room. Hey! I shouted.
What?
Mom and Dad asked in unison. Is that a chainsaw blade hanging up there? Dad glanced where I was pointing. I think so, but that isn't going to help. He stopped mid-sentence and sat there for a second with his mouth open. Suddenly, his face split into a grin. Look at that!
Dear, it's a chainsaw blade.
Mom sighed. No, next to it. Look at that piece of wire. It's perfect. Mom, Fred, and I now looked where Dad was pointing.
I think you're right.
Mom grinned. In a flash, Dad had pulled the wire from the wall and ran out to the pickup truck. He fished a rag and a screwdriver out of his toolbox, then hurried over to the driver's door. Annie was bonking her little blonde forehead against the glass and laughing at my sister's reactions. She's not too worried about all this, Dad reassured Mom.
I know. Just hurry, please.
Mom fretted. Here, hold this for a second, Dad said, handing me the wire. As we looked on, he wrapped the tip of the screwdriver in the rag, then inserted it into the narrow gap where the door met the roof of the truck, and pried it open a fraction of an inch. Hand me the wire, Al, he grunted, and I passed it to him. If you've ever played the game Operation, then you know something of the infuriating ordeal that is unlocking a car door with a length of wire. Inch by inch, Dad introduced the wire into the truck's interior, and it slowly descended towards the door handle like a tree snake lowering itself from a branch. Whenever it touched the glass, it made a sharp little knock and wobbled like a radio antenna blowing in the wind. The lock knobs on the F-150 that year could not be gripped with a wire loop since they sank completely out of sight into the door panel, a design that surely earned Ford's engineers a curse or two. So Dad could only open the door by pulling on the door handle at precisely the right angle. Doing so required incredible dexterity, patience, and skill, and would certainly have been easier without a 2-year-old batting at the wire like a curious kitten. Can you distract Annie? Dad grunted. I almost had it that time. That's what you said last time, I grunted, letting the dirt Fred and I had begun piling up beside the truck run through my fingers. And the time before that, Fred added.
Boys,
Mom pleaded, sensing Dad's rising frustration.
why don't you two help make some sandwiches?
Is Annie going to spend the night in the truck, Mom? Fred asked. Dad grunted and muttered something about breaking off door handles.
No, she's not.
Mom said as she rocked little Caldwell. Can you see where I'm at from the other side, Candace? Dad asked.
I'll go check.
She said. At least 30 minutes had passed since Dad made his first attempt at opening the truck door, and we still didn't seem any closer to getting our little sister out of the truck. Not that she seemed to mind. Honking the horn was the most fun she'd had all day. Dad shook out his cramping shoulder and neck muscles and stretched. Okay, can you see over there, Candace?
Yes, I can see.
Candace shouted back. Beatrice and Alice, get Annie to the passenger side of the truck, please, Dad said. I'm gonna get it this time. Beatrice and Alice pressed their foreheads to the passenger side window and began making faces at Annie. It took a bit, but she finally left her spot at the steering wheel and came over to laugh at her sisters. Mom, Fred, Caldwell, and I looked on. With the determination of a brain surgeon preparing to perform a lobotomy, Dad gripped the wire and began feeding it down toward the door handle.
A little to the left, Dad.
Candace offered. Dad nodded and twisted on the end of the wire protruding above the truck.
Lower, lower.
Candace breathed, her eyes locked on the wire's progress. Dad let out a long breath and eased the wire a little further into the cab, his hands feeding it in an inch at a time.
Oh, you're there. You're touching the handle, Dad.
Candace yelped. Okay, now I just have to get it looped over the end, Dad grunted. We all watched with bated breath, and Annie even looked up from where she was removing the contents of the glove compartment, one item at a time, to see what everyone was staring at. I think I'm there, Dad declared.
It looks like you're hooked.
Candace agreed. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my ears. Okay, let's give it a tug, Dad muttered to himself. Then he grasped the wire and pulled. With a little pop, the door swung open, and we erupted into cheers as if our team had just won the Super Bowl. Mom pulled the passenger door open and swept Annie into a bear hug, showering her little blonde hair with kisses.
Oh, thank goodness.
She sighed, hugging both her babies. Caldwell babbled happily, and Annie, who still clutched a piece of gum in her chubby little hand, stared around at all her family members, wondering what everyone was so worked up about. Great job, Dad! Fred and I cheered. Piece of cake. Dad grinned and surveyed the bit of wire whose purpose had been so mysterious.
I guess we know what the wire's for now.
Beatrice said.
We sure do.
Mom laughed.
Thank goodness we're not the first Joneses to get locked out of their car up here.
Yeah, I think I'll put it back where we found it, Dad nodded. I bet the person who used it last figured it would come in handy again sometime. I just hope that the next person to use it isn't me. We all laughed and wrapped Annie in a group hug. She was just pleased with all the attention she had received. She probably thought the whole thing had been so much fun, she'd have to try it again sometime. Back in Rexburg, Lily's friend was taking her leave, and I needed to drive her back to her place since she didn't have a car.
Could you grab some milk on the way home?
Lily asked me as I pulled on my cowboy boots. Sure, I said, fishing around in my pocket. Where are the car keys?
I don't have them.
Lily replied.
I thought you had them.
Oh no, I groaned. I rushed down to the parking lot and tried the door handle on our little white car. Locked. With a sinking feeling, I pressed my face to the glass and looked through the window. There in the center console, I could just make out a key fob in the cup holder. Behind me, Lily called down from the walkway outside the apartment.
Did you lock them inside?
I wasn't sure why she had such a big smile on her face. It looks like it, I groaned. I should really get a spare key.
Oh no, what are you gonna do?
Lily's friend called down. I massaged my chin and peered through the driver's side window, lost in thought. Do we have any wire clothes hangers? I asked Lily.
I'm not sure.
She replied. Al balanced on her hip.
I could go check.
How about some random wire hanging on the wall? Anything like that? And there you go. Locked out. Oh
Yeah,
man.
I was very fretted, but
Yeah.
it wasn't hot up there, and the little side windows in the back seats were open.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, and so Dad was like, "She's fine. She's fine."
Yeah, she's not gonna overheat.
No,
And I don't even remember her getting upset at all.
no,
She was just tickled pink to have all the people staring in at her.
yeah, and she loved the buttons and the horn and everything.
Hmm. Yeah. It was I remember how excited I was when it got unlocked.
Yeah,
So good on Dad.
yep,
He could
Dad.
break into any vehicle.
He's had a chance to do it to almost everyone we have.
Yeah. Well, you were telling us that when when you guys lived in Pocatello, you got locked out of your car there too.
Yeah, and Dad was not there.
Uh,
We had a Ford Bronco, and the girls were in their car seats. It was February, March. Brenna was just a baby, and so it's a busy corner. So I locked the door and got out, and I put fuel in the car and or the vehicle, and then I went to open the door to go to get my wallet to go pay. And I realized, oh my gosh, I locked the car. Oh my gosh.
oh,
Oh, and the babies are in there. So at that time, Camilla could get out of the car seat. And so I encouraged her to get out. And it was the vehicle that you had to pull the door handle to make it unlock because the knob was down too deep.
mm-hmm.
And people came up to the window and were trying to help me encourage her, which just scared her. She didn't want anything to do with other people.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, I'm going to have to call a locksmith. Oh my gosh. It's going to cost us money. I don't have that in the budget. Dad's going to be so mad. Because he was in Idaho Falls and he had the spare key.
Oh my gosh.
So I called a locksmith and they came and popped it right open. Those nifty little tools they have. And
Mm-hmm.
and then he handed me the bill and it said, no charge, baby's in car.
Oh.
I was so thankful.
Yeah. Oh, and thank goodness you got him out. It was cold, I bet.
Yeah,
So.
it was kind of cold and I was just worried. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to call the locksmith.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I've broken into a couple vehicles when I locked keys in, and we've had campus security at BYU Idaho help us out a couple times. So I think
Yeah.
everybody has a story about locking their car keys inside.
Well, I know one time we were on the mountain and the dog locked the vehicle.
Oh, that's talent.
Yeah, he was jumping around in there and pushed the lock down, and but we had thought about bringing the keys out of the vehicle just in case.
Oh man, and you should have acted on that prompting.
Well, we did. Yeah, we did.
Oh, you did. Oh, thank goodness. Okay.
They were on the hood of the pickup because I thought,
Okay.
you know what? It was probably after little Annie got locked in the pickup.
Yeah, maybe the dog could do the same act. Oh
So,
man. Well, this was fun, Mom. Thank you
yeah,
for coming on, and the recording process today has been kind of crazy. It's a weekend and all the boys are up and about, so there's a good chance someone will make an appearance in this episode. So,
more guests than just mom.
yep, more guests than just Mom, but yeah, I love you lots and thanks for joining me. It
You're
was
welcome.
fun.
Thanks for having me. I love you.
Yeah. So if you have anyone listening out there has a story about getting locked out of their vehicle, be sure to tell us about it. You can message me on Facebook or shoot me an email at untoldtalesthepodcast@gmail.com. And as always, this has been another episode of Untold Tales from this side of nowhere, where we work twice as hard for half as much and still find time for the important things, like
Like
fishing.
fish.
See you next time, folks.